மறக்காம சர்ப்ரைஸ் பண்ணுங்க. Thank you.
So we are going to start our journey into the Kann defense, and the first major option that I'd like to examine from white is after e4, c6, the move d4, d5. Of course, we will be playing c6, d5 against anything white can do, and we will be building up our Kann on the light squares. We will start by looking at the variations c takes d5, e takes d5, c takes d5, and bishop d3. Now, this is known as the exchange Kann, and it is a pretty decent weapon from white's arsenal, and I've seen over the years that this is a really popular weapon at the club level, where white is just trying to develop his pieces to good squares. He's following his system of development, and then he wants to start a kingside attack. So just to show you a glimpse of how what white's plans are, I'm going to play a system for black that's not very good, a little bit passive, but the main point here is to show what white's ideas are. So let's say knight c6, white will play c3, and generally white is going for a combination of bishop f4, knight f3, castles, knight d2, and rook e1, and then try to place this knight at e5. So a mess of arrows on the board, but I will show you how this looks like. Let's say knight f6, bishop f4, e6, not a very good move blocking the bishop, knight f3, bishop e7, castles, castles. Now, for example, knight d2, bishop d7, rook e1, let's say rook c8, and now knight e5. So this is what white is going for. This is white's goal. I'm going to flip the board here so we can get a better look. And white has established his pieces on the squares that I've alluded to. And white is actually gearing for a not-so-gentle plan of checkmating us on the king side. And how he can do that is he continue bringing in more pieces to take part in this assault by playing, for example, rook e3, and then swinging this rook over. Also, the queen can perhaps join the fray at some point, and the other rook will also be part of the action. So this is what white's goal is, white's dream, and as I mentioned, it's pretty popular at club level because this setup, here are ours, it's really easy to follow for white, and if all goes well, he may even get a pretty big kingside attack. Now, another thing the exchange variation is famous for is this pawn structure here. This is known as the Carlsbad pawn structure, named after a town where this structure was reached quite often in the tournament, Carlsbad 1929, I believe. And what was discovered there, or what is known today, this pawn structure, white should be trying to attack on the king side, for example, like in this position. Meanwhile, the correct plan for black, or a common plan for black, is to utilize this queenside pawn structure and launch these pawns up the board to start a so-called minority attack. Okay, now that we know a little bit about the plans for both sides here, I'm going to provide you an introduction on a couple of weapons that I'm recommending for black here. Now, a weapon, so let's go back here, so bishop d3, knight c6. So, one weapon that I've been using for the past several years with great success is after this move c3, we have these arrows, we know what white wants to do. I've been using this pretty popular modern move, queen c7, which looks a little bit strange, moving the queen early, but the idea is that we're actually stopping white's setup. We're not allowing him to play bishop f4, since the queen would obviously just take that bishop. So we're disturbing white's setup plans before continuing with our development. Now, I checked the statistics in my own personal database, and over the years I've actually accumulated a 90% score with this variation for black, so very strong results in my favor here, so I'm very satisfied with this line. Let me show you how the main line goes, the variation that I face the most here. My opponents have played knight e2, trying to force through bishop f4. Bishop g4 was my response, creating a pin to prevent bishop f4, or make it less desirable. Now, most of my opponents have played f3, breaking this pin, bishop d7, retreating, and bishop f4. So, this looks like a very ambitious play from white. It's f3, bishop f4, getting a tempo against the queen. But, after e5, a very important move to remember, pawn takes e5, knight e5, I have won all my games in this variation, and I'm more than happy to suggest this for you. White is going to try to prove that his aggressive play in the opening, getting this bishop out, is going to give him maybe some kind of initiative. Maybe he'll be able to play against this isolated pawn. But in my view, and practice supports this, white has been creating too many weaknesses here. This pawn at f3 is creating all these dark squares that black can easily exploit with timely maneuvers to attack these squares. Furthermore, the king is going to be castled there, maybe not so safe. And in general, this isolated pawn on d5 here is quite strong. It's the only pawn in the center, and it controls a lot of useless squares. For example, the knight can swing over to c4. So this is a very satisfactory line for black, and of course we will also address the alternatives white may play here, but I think it's a very good line that prevents white's main ideas and also gets ready to, especially in the main line, gives black a lot of dynamic play. The other variation that I want to show you, this is a variation that I used to play quite often. I do not play it as much anymore, but I happily recommend it to my students, and I will happily recommend it to you here, is to play knight f6, just to get on with development. Now, white goes bishop f4, and here is the real point of this variation. As I mentioned, white wants to attack on the queen side, so we will play this move g6 here with black. Now, the idea of g6 here is twofold. The idea that we can get right away is that we're going to build a fianchetto here and a very solid kingside structure where white is really going to struggle to get an attack going. However, the main idea is quite interesting, quite unusual. Let me show you how that goes. Let's say white just develops in normal fashion. Nothing too crazy, just getting along with the setup that I showed at the beginning of the video. And now I will show you one of the sneaky ideas behind the g6. It's this development with bishop f5. Now the main idea is, of course, white will take, black takes, and it looks like this doesn't maybe make that much sense because black is sort of weakening the kingside position. But it turns out this is a very interesting and double-edged attempt to get a initiative, basically. With the pawn on f5, now we have much more control of the center, so a future knight e4 may be on the cards. And this g-file here, where one may argue that white is going to be exploiting the position of black's king. In fact, we hope to prove just the opposite with the idea of playing king h8, for example, rook e1, king h8, even possible immediately, followed by rook g8 and starting an attack on this g-file. Excuse me. So we will be looking at these two variations, queen c7 over here, and preventing white's plans, and then just trying to get along with development, maybe using a minority attack later on. And also the second plan of fianchettoing on the king side, and then providing this really hard, with this rock-hard defense, this shelter for the king, and then actually turning the tables on white and going for an attack. So we will be looking at these two variations, and the choice is yours, which one you want to go.
மறக்காம சர்ப்ரைஸ் பண்ணுங்க. Thank you.